In this video, we'll talk about greatest common factor, GCF, and least common multiple or least common denominator, LCD. So let's talk about greatest common factor. How to find the greatest common factor? Well, we have to do two steps. 1. Find the prime factorization of all numbers and multiply the common factors to the lowest power. Well, what does that mean, prime factorization? It means to write the numbers using products of prime numbers. So let's review what prime number means. Prime numbers. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, and so on are prime numbers. Why? Because their only factors are 1 and itself. So you see how any of these numbers can be written as 1 times itself. Like, for example, 9 is not a prime number because it can be written also as 3 times 3. So let's do a couple problems. Find the prime factorization of 4. Well, 4 can be written 2 times 2. So we are going to write it 2 to the second. This is the prime factorization. Now let's do for 750. So because it requires some work, I'm going to start with 750 here. And if I divide 750 by 5, I'm going to get 150. So we write it like that. I do know that 750 divides evenly by 5 because it ends in 0. So the same 150 divides evenly by 5. So I'm going to write 5 times 30. 30 divided by 5, it's 6. 6 divided by 2, it's 3. So the prime factorization of 750 is 2 times 3 times, well, I have this 5 3 times, so 5 to the third. So now that we talked about all the important basics of finding the greatest common factor, let's do one problem with finding the greatest common factor of 4 and 8. So the steps were find the prime factorization of your numbers. So 4, it's 2 to the second, while 8, it's 2 to the third. And the other rule was multiply all the common factors, so we can see that 2 is a common factor on both of them, to the lowest power. So 2 to the second, which is 4, is the greatest common factor. What does that mean? It means both 4 and 8 divide evenly by 4. So if you think about it, 2, it's also a common factor of 4 and 8 because 4 divided by 2 is 2 and 8 divided by 2 is 4. 1, it's also a common factor of 4 and 8. But the greatest one between 1, 2, and 4, it's 4. So that's why we get 4 here. Now, where do we use this greatest common factor? Well, for example, when we simplify fractions, if you had the fraction 4 over 8 and you had to simplify it, what we would do is we would divide both numbers by the greatest common factor. So if we divide both numbers by 4, we are going to get 1/2, and that's the lowest form of the fraction. Let's do one more problem. So greatest common factor of 39 and 750. So 39 can be written as 3 times 13, and 750, we did the problem above, number 2, is 2 times 3 times 5 to the third. So the greatest common factor is given by the common factors to the lowest power. So the common factors, the number that it's in both of them, it's 3. So the greatest common factor of 39 and 750, it's 3. What does that mean? Well, if you had the problem simplify the fraction 750 over 39, you could divide both of them by 3, and you would get 250 over 13. You can change that into a mixed number, or we can leave it like that. And finally, one more problem where we want to find the greatest common factor of 2 and 19. So 2 is just 2 times 1, 19 is just 1 times 19. And the greatest common factor, so 1 times 2 and 19 is 1 times 19. So the greatest common factor is 1. When that happens, we call the numbers respectively prime. In this case, each number is prime, but because the greatest common factor is 1, they are called respectively prime. And I can show you one more example where we want to find the greatest common factor of, let's say 8. 8 is not a prime number, that's 2 to the third. And 49, for example, which is not a prime number, it's 7 to the second. But they don't have a common factor except 1, right? So again, these two numbers are respectively prime. So if, for example, you had the problem simplify 8 over 49, you wouldn't be able to go any further. This is the simplest form because these two numbers don't have any common factor. Now let's talk about LCD or LCM, least common multiple or least common denominator. How to find LCD? Well, to find LCD, we have to find the prime factorization of all numbers, so exactly what we did for greatest common factor, and then we have to multiply all the factors to the highest power. Let's begin by finding least common denominator of 4 and 8. So 4 is 2 to the second, as we saw in previously. 8 is 2 to the third. And the rule says multiply all the factors to the highest power. So 2 to the third, which makes it 8. So the least common denominator or least common multiple of 4 and 8 is 8. And just think about it. The multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, and so on. The multiples of 8 are 8, 16, 24, and so on. So as you can notice, 8, it's a multiple, 16, it's a multiple, 24, it's a multiple, but out of all of them, we choose the least one, right, which is 8. Now, where do we use least common multiple? Well, the name least common denominator should give us a hint, because if we have to add 1 over 4 plus 3 over 8, then we would need these two fractions to have the same denominator to be able to add them. So when we look at LCD of 4 and 8, we saw that it's 8. So that means the first fraction has to be multiplied by 2 over 2 to get the LCD 8. So we get 2 over 8 plus 3 over 8, which equals 5 over 8. We add the numerators and we copy the denominator. So with the LCD, it's used when we have to add or subtract fractions with different denominators. Let's take a look at another example. We want to find LCD of 3 and 5. So the prime factorization of 3 is just 1 times 3. The prime factorization of 5 is just 1 times 5. So the LCD is copy all the factors. So 1 times 3 times 5 to the highest power. So that's it. It's 15, right? So LCD of 3 and 5 is 15. What does that mean? 15 can be divided evenly by 3 and by 5. So for example, if you had to subtract 3 over 5 minus 7 over 3, we can see how we have different denominators, but we know that the LCD of 3 and 5, it's 15. So we have to multiply the first equation by 3 over 3, and we have to multiply the second one by 5 over 5, so that we get 15 at the denominator in both cases. So 3 times 3 is 9, 9 over 15 minus 35 over 15. That means 9 minus 35 over 15, which gives us negative 26 over 15. And none of these, we cannot simplify it any longer. We can write it as a mixed number if we want. Negative 15 goes into 26 one time, and 11 is left. I hope this helps.